everyone. Welcome to At Home with Sally. I'm Sally Clarkson, and I have the biggest privilege in the world to be with so many friends from all over the world who join me every week to listen to my stories, inspiration, biblical encouragement, and I am just so glad that you're here today. Thanks so much for joining me. Hello, my friends. I'm so glad that you joined me. I'm Sally Clarkson, and I am sitting at home with two of my dear friends who work with me all the time. As many of you know, this weekend I had a leadership conference in my home, and we talk a lot, and we eat a lot, and we giggle a lot, and we've been friends for years. And so I wanted to kind of just have a fun, hopefully inspirational little Monday morning podcast, because I hate to miss these podcasts. And by the time you get this, I will definitely be going to the airport to catch my plane to Oxford. So welcome, and we just thought we would give a little tiny bit of encouragement. So I have with me my friends Jenny and Gretchen.
Hello.
Hello.
And we were talking about the fact, which you'll hear more of tomorrow, we were talking about the fact that we have just hit 5 years of celebration of our membership that they are in charge of, really. We all do it all together, but I couldn't do it if they didn't do it because they do most of the work. But anyway, we were kind of astounded this week. We were looking back on how in the world we all got together, because they live in different states, North Carolina and Idaho, and we have other people from other states that work with us. And I just would love for you to tell them, as you look back, we're kind of amazed at how this came about, but tell me, how did you both even come to this whole ministry and end up being in this crazy place? And the thing is that I want all of you to know is that there are a group of us, it's not just me, but there are a group of us who we all love the things that we write about. We love encouraging you. We love the messages. We have lived the messages in our family. And so I just said, let's just do a quick podcast to kind of tell them a little bit about what we've done this weekend, how in the world you got here, and a little bit of some of the great wisdom that we talked about in our pajamas this morning on the deck. So why don't either one of you go?
Well, I'm Jenny, and I live in Idaho, as she said. I have 3 boys that are 19, 16, and 6. So it's wild in my house right now. And when my firstborn was about 4, I was poking around for motherhood helps, and someone gave me a book. I think there are so many women out there that have come to Sally and Whole Heart Ministries through a book, and it always is a wonderful way to draw someone in. So if you can, give away a book. But from that point, I started attending conferences. I wanted to get as involved as I could. I helped at registration, and it led one thing after another till I banged down the door, and Sally said, okay, you can help me. And now here I am.
Yeah, there you are. And I tend to work best with people who are driven, self-motivated, who think of themselves before I ever got to them as people who want to invest in the kingdom. And because I'm really not a good leader, I run as fast as I can, as hard as I can, and I think, I hope y'all are running with me. So we've had this great friendship that has continued to develop over the years, and we all do a lot of work in our home, outside of our home, in groups, and it's just been so much fun. Once again, we couldn't meet over COVID, so this is the first time in what?
3 years?
3 years, yeah. So anyway, Gretchen, tell us about you.
Yes, so I'm Gretchen, and I live in North Carolina, and I have 5 children, 19, 17, 15, almost 13, and 7. And we've homeschooled from the beginning, and when my daughter was really little, and she's my firstborn, I am a pediatrician by training, and so I had read a lot of secular parenting books, but really I was looking for other things to read that were more reflective of what I had felt in my heart. And so I found on a blog back in the early 2000s, a woman had put on her sidebar books on my nightstand, and Mission of Motherhood was one of the books.
You never know when you list a book that
Yes.
somebody in the world is looking for hope or for encouragement or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was such a neat story. Keep going.
Yes. And so I ordered the book, and as I started reading, I pretty much cried through the whole book because it was just what I felt in my heart and what I longed for as a mother, but I never had the words to express or even knew the depth of what I felt. And you just expressed it so beautifully, just about how much we love our children and want to nurture them and build relationship with them and be Christ to them in the way that we serve and pour out and relate to them. So it was really a life-changing book for me. And my husband even said, okay, I want to know what you have read because you are a different person.
Really?
Yes.
That was so neat.
He read Mission of Motherhood.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Do you know, I've actually had a lot of people whose husbands have read. So what did he think?
Loved it.
Oh, did he?
Loved it. And Heartfelt Discipline. That was another one, Clay's book, Heartfelt Discipline, that really is just deep and theological and just gets at the heart of biblical parenting. So, and faith, spirit-led parenting, which I think is so much of what we long for.
Well, and I will mention that book because there are so many people who've come to us in the past few years who don't even know about it. But the book is basically about loving your children well, and that how biblical it is to have a relational sort of discipline in your child's life, not a physical, harsh, judgmental, controlling, authoritarian. So those of you who want both to have high training, we train our children, we love our children, but the physical discipline isn't at the center of what he wrote about. So it was a kind of a life changer for many people, I think.
Definitely.
So anyway, well, we thought it might be fun if we could share with you so that you could have a podcast today, because I couldn't, after they leave, I'm packing and going. But anyway, we were talking about things that we wish we'd known, or things that were perspectives that we've all changed in. And so I thought, well, why don't you just share a couple of them, and then we'll say we bid you adieu and go to eat Mexican food where we're going tonight. Yeah, there you go. So what are some of the kind of like core messages that as you look back on all the years and all the different seasons, what is on your heart, Jenny?
I think that the word discipleship is always the first thing that comes to mind, because as we're training and nurturing and loving our children, really the first goal is to disciple them in the Lord, to help them know Him, to help them love Him, to help them see Him in nature. And along with that is we need to be discipled and be mentored by the Lord through Scripture, through study, through books and podcasts. And so raising our children is just as much about our own character growing and maturing as it is about the growing and maturing that our children are doing.
I think that's wonderful. But you also, were you the one that had something about the race? Or is that Gretchen?
That's Gretchen.
Okay. All right, Gretchen, tell us about you. And you are a runner, aren't you?
Yes. My next marathon is January. So.
Oh, really? Wow. So she's a marathon runner, and this will have importance as you look at the different things.
Well, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is motherhood is a marathon and not a sprint. And really learning to pace yourself in motherhood. I think, in the younger years, you can be busy, doing so many things and get exhausted and worn out. And you may spend a lot of time, I know I did, spending a lot of time doing things that maybe are just doing and not the real being and the relationship part. And so as my children have gotten older, I've realized just adjusting my expectations and realizing that we want a pace of life that allows for relationship, a life that provides for what your goals are. That if your goal is the relationship and the discipleship, like Jenny talked about, and to have these meaningful conversations and to be an influence in your children's lives, that really thinking about the pace of your life. Because the way of culture will always make you move in a direction of faster and sprinting.
And it'll eat up your time, your energy. It'll leave you depleted. And also, it won't allow for that time to talk, to discuss, to be friends. And I think that's so important because I know that you do a lot of things and your family does a lot of things. But tell the example about being in the kitchen.
Yes. So I just think it's so important. I've realized in the past several years of just having more margin because a lot of the conversations with your children, at least with mine, they just happen more organically and they're not, okay, we have 5 minutes to talk, pour your heart out. I mean, that just doesn't work in a relationship.
Especially when they're teenagers.
Yes. You just have to be ready at any moment. And so one night I was fixing dinner and my teenage son walks up to the counter and said, "So, Mom, what do you think about angels and hell?" And I thought,
you had an answer just right ready on the tip of your tongue.
Let me fix the salmon.
So we had, a great conversation, and thinking about that, like it just takes having the margin. And there have been seasons in our life when we are running out the door, carrying food to go to the next thing, and it squelches those moments. And so by fixing dinner at home and having my children there without, we definitely have activities and things that we do, but just really trying to be intentional with having more margin for those conversations.
And planning it in. I think one of the things that we were talking about a lot this weekend was all of us have children who are already launched. You all have first children who are already launched. My children have been launched long ago. But what you don't realize is that seasons have a certain amount of time and then they suddenly close. For instance, you have your baby and then the baby starts walking and they have a whole different developmental stage from 2 to 4. And then after 4, a lot of things are closed. You can't get it back. And then so on and so forth. And so as we look at this secular world for all of our kids, we realized that number one, we needed to continuously prepare them, talk with them, converse with them, make time with them in the midst of our lives, more important than some of the other activities that they did, to really prepare them to be lights in a very dark world, to know what peer pressure looked like, to know what temptation looked like, to come to us if any terrible thing happened to them, to know that they would be welcome in our presence and we would help them with anything that came up. And what we talked about is that that really is something that you have to have margin in your schedule for. And that's when I even scheduled one boy one week for breakfast, the other boy the next week, so that I would earn the right to kind of bring up these conversations about things that were essential to their morality, their faith, to prepare them for the times when they would doubt, when they would be tempted. But that requires time. And I think that, would you all say you were bored sometimes when your children were little?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was too. It's okay to be bored. That doesn't mean you're a bad mom.
Right. And by margin, we also don't mean you're sitting on the couch just twiddling your thumbs waiting for your children to come to you. We mean you're spending maybe more time at home. You're fixing dinner, trying to do that more nights than you spend at fast food. You have your own pace of life that's interruptible, where you can set something aside and speak with that child. It doesn't mean that you're not doing all those things that we have to do to keep a household running.
Yeah, and I really think that, if people continuously understood how important the first 4 years are. I was bored because I had been working and traveling all over the world and doing stuff. But I kept reading about how important those years were to talk with them, to narrate life to them. Oh, my goodness, look out the window. We see a bird flying in the tree. And I was reading about how kissing the top of their head makes them more intelligent. And holding them, singing to them, changing one more diaper. The reason you hold them is because you can train them. That's why kids are dependent when they're little. You may never use your hand for violence or whatever, and you're kissing their hands only for gentleness. And, all the things we were realizing that sometimes people don't understand that to not train a child is actually to keep the child from having intelligence in their minds about how to really interact with people, how to interact with life. And so you're training them to have self-control, to talk gently. Training is not spanking or disciplining. Training is giving them a taste, an understanding for, an education about what will help them to function and flourish in their world. Can you all give an example of that? Or do you know what I mean? We've been talking about how even the 24 Family Ways helps a child have an expectation of how they can go into the world. They need leadership.
I think with my little guy right now, it's very different because I had the two older ones. I have Sally's voice in my head now from all these years. And there are many moments where I'll say, Max, will you set the table? And he says, no. Right? They all do it. Or he just ignores me. And I'll say, oh, didn't you mean, yes, Mommy, I'd be happy to do that. And 99% of the time he'll say, okay, yeah, that's what I meant. Yes, Mommy. And just modeling for him the words that are kind, the words of expectation, rather than saying, oh, you're busted, now you're in trouble, and I'm angry with you for that response.
No.
So it's a lot easier this time around to be gentle because I realize how much more effective that is.
Yeah, and that sometimes it even takes them a little bit to hear you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for me, I think it has been a lot of entering into those things with them. If it is, teaching them about doing laundry or teaching them, setting the table. It's here, okay, I'm going to get the napkins and you get the forks and let's do it together. And how to speak to their sibling if they're frustrated. What would be a better thing to say to your brother, or what's another way you could have said that? So trying to enter in and model with them and trying to have like that Christ-like perspective of I'm going to model to you and show you and walk with you through this process instead of, making demand after demand.
And I think that's what we're talking about when we say give yourself time to do the essential things. And the more you do it, the more full your life will be. But I really feel like many times when kids are over-involved in places outside of the home, you're competing with the values that they picked up to try to correct them and then to train them. Whereas if you can really focus some good focus time at home, even teaching a child how to stay in their bed. I mean, we always made our children, not made them, we created a place for them in the afternoons to read for an hour. And even when Lillian was 3 years old, Sarah would put, oh my goodness, I have a basket of books just for you. And here's a few little, I think it was like Cheerio little O's, oat O's from the UK. You can nibble on these and you can look at the pictures in the book and Mommy will set the timer. And when the timer's up, you can come and tell me what you read. And you're such a big girl. I just know that you will be able to read these books and tell me about them. And so in the same way that I kind of made my children a schedule in such a way that they would learn how to have self-control, how to play on their own, how to read or whatever, you give them Legos or you give them whatever. I've just been watching her do this little by little training. And how another thing is peer pressure. A positive peer pressure is that once one or two of your children do it, then everybody else thinks, oh, this is what we Clarksons do, or this is what, and a training one child helps all the other children.
Yes. And she only had to say that once, right, to Lillian?
No, I mean, but, and I can remember sometimes when the kids would be standing at the door peeking out and saying, is my special time up yet? And you start out shorter and then you get longer. But
over and over and over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah. But we're kind of just blah, blah, blahing about some of the things that we talked about this week. But another thing, and I don't remember exactly what it was because we've talked about so many things, but it was learning to change your expectations through the seasons and learning to that there will be times when the marathon, how in a marathon you hit the wall at about, 3/4 of the way through?
Mile 20 usually for me.
And that's the same in life. There's so many metaphors in what we do that have to do with life. But yes, you will think, I can't do it, I can't go on, I can't whatever. But the person who ends up finishing is the person who ends up having the fulfillment of crossing the finish line. And I think all of us have hit phases. You were talking to me this morning about a time when you hit a little bit of a fear factor. What's going on? I don't know how this is going to work out. We do that all the time with our children. But over the period of time, you realize to not be surprised by anything, to know that your children will change and go through phases. And sometimes it'll seem like their personality changed, but that you are there to be stable, to seek wisdom, to be able to bring assurance in their life. We were talking about how most children at some point will have doubts. It's a hard world to live in. They want to be loved. They want to be secure. The world can be a scary place. You don't want to introduce them to all those things until they're much older. Children deserve to have an innocent baby, toddlerhood, earlyhood. But that the way that we articulate to them, I'm going to believe forward in your life. I will walk with you through this. I've had doubts before too. But that there are many seasons like that when we're tempted to be fearful, or we're tempted to say, well, I'm not making a difference. And so we put them back into whether it's school or another class or with other people. And I would say those are the important times to review why you came up with whatever ideals you have to begin with, and to remember why you felt like it was the right thing for your family, and then to keep going. Because one time Sarah said to me, Mom, you never let me get away with anything. And of course that wasn't true. But she said, but as I look back now, I'm so glad that you kept gently training and giving us values, because they have helped me in work, they've helped me in friendship, they've held me in life. And she said, I think some moms just get so tired, they give up. And weren't we all tempted to?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, any one final last thing you want to say, because we need to go out for our walk and go to Mexican food.
One thing I would add is with pacing yourself is to build in time for reflection and renewal for yourself. Like Sally said, to go back and refine your goals again, and realize that the expectations you have for home and family when your children are 4 and under are going to be different than your expectations and your goals when they're 13 to 17. And so just having those daily times, weekly times, annual times, just to reflect and renew, and to remind yourself of why you are doing what you're doing, and you're making an eternal impact in the lives of your children and others in your sphere.
Well, and on that, I would also add, all of us have taught Mom Heart groups. We take one of our books and we go through it with friends, whether small or big, or, we've done it one-on-one. We've done it, I had at one time 185 people in this house. But to have other friends who are called to similar ideals, and then to read a chapter of a book together and then talk about it, because I have gleaned more encouragement from being with other women who said, oh, I've been there.
Yes.
Oh, my child has done that. Oh, this or that. And I always had to start the groups that I was in. You all too, I think.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But in starting the groups, we've seen how women really are better off when they're encouraged by people who cause them to want to be the best they can be and who care about them. And that's why we started Mom Heart groups. But anyway, all right. Well, this is just a little bit of what we've done. We have lots planned for our membership this year. We have we talk about book ideas all the time, podcast ideas. It's just so much fun to be with other women who are creative and productive, and who spend their lives giving out to other people. And then we get together and we have so much fun praying about, thinking about what we need in our lives, and hopefully what you need in your life. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for just being a part of helping us to spread these messages of hope and of love and of encouragement to the world, because that's what we hope we're doing. So would one of you all pray for these precious ones?
Okay, sure. Lord, thank you so much for every woman that is listening to this. I pray that you would pour your Spirit out on her, give her confidence and hope to move forward with the things that God has called her to not be afraid, to trust you with her children. And I just pray that she would feel encouraged today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Have a great week, my friends.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I hope you've enjoyed our time together today and that you'll join me next week. Be sure to look for more inspiration on my blog at sallyclarkson.com. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.